What if the royal baby we all celebrated was never really born at all? A shocking video of Meghan Markle's baby bump collapsing has gone viral, and now, hospital insiders are stepping forward with claims that could tear the entire royal narrative apart. Medical staff from London's Portland Hospital allege Meghan was never admitted to give birth, and there's no official record of her delivery. As if that weren't enough, palace sources say Prince Harry himself demanded a secret DNA test after spotting strange features in Archie that didn't add up. What really happened behind closed doors? And why is the palace desperately trying to silence the storm now erupting in its own backyard? The truth is unraveling, and what we've uncovered will leave you stunned. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. What if one of the most celebrated moments in modern royal history, the birth of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's first child, was never what it seemed? What if the images, the headlines, the glowing coverage, and the carefully worded palace statements were all just part of a much larger, deliberately constructed illusion? What if, beneath the surface of this fairy tale narrative, there was a deeply disturbing deception that not only fooled the world, but also potentially fooled one of the most senior members of the royal family, Prince Harry himself? In recent weeks, a video has begun circulating online that has reignited one of the most controversial conversations to ever emerge around Meghan Markle. In this video, her baby bump appears to tweak, folding unnaturally as she bends down. Not once, but multiple times, across various public appearances. While these clips have long existed in corners of the internet, quietly discussed and easily dismissed as conspiratorial, this newly edited compilation has spread like wildfire. It's not just YouTube creators or anonymous users dissecting it now. Nurses, midwives, and even medical experts have begun weighing in. And their verdict? Something doesn't add up. But what took this story from fringe speculation to a full-blown royal crisis wasn't just a viral video. It was what came after. A series of anonymous whistleblowers, staff who reportedly worked at Portland Hospital in London during the exact window of Meghan's supposed delivery, stepped forward. And their claims are nothing short of explosive. According to these insiders, there are no medical records showing Meghan Markle was ever admitted to deliver a child at that hospital. No documentation, no digital trail, nothing. At first, the idea seems impossible. How could something so significant, so deeply intertwined with the future of the British monarchy, be fabricated? Why would a duchess, married into the most scrutinized family in the world, choose to fake something as monumental as a royal birth? But as the allegations mount, and as timelines begin to be scrutinized with forensic intensity, disturbing gaps start to emerge. Gaps that are too wide to be ignored. And at the heart of the storm stands Prince Harry, once fiercely protective of his wife, now allegedly questioning everything. According to one royal insider, Harry privately requested a DNA test after noticing features in Archie that, in his own words, didn't feel familiar. Sources close to the situation describe a prince torn between loyalty and suspicion, between fatherhood and the growing fear that he had been misled by the very person he trusted most. The public has always had questions. Why wasn't there a traditional Lindowing moment, as there was for Princess Diana and Kate Middleton? Why the carefully staged black and white photo of the baby's feet instead of a real introduction to the press? Why were hospital staff instructed to sign non-disclosure agreements in a facility that had always been public-facing when it came to royal births? And now, more than 4 years later, why is this story suddenly bubbling back to the surface, with renewed urgency, explosive details, and a trail of anonymous but credible voices refusing to be silent any longer? This video will walk you through it all: the shocking footage, the timeline inconsistencies, the hospital staff's chilling testimonies, the anonymous documents, and the internal chaos reportedly unfolding behind palace doors. We'll trace every statement, every decision, every moment of this story, not through rumor, but through cross-examination of facts, testimonies, and available public evidence. We'll also explore why this is not just a scandal. It's a threat to the very legitimacy of the royal succession and the public trust in Britain's most iconic institution. As we unravel what may be the most disturbing deception in modern royal history, we ask you to keep one question in mind. What if the truth was never meant to be seen? And what happens to a monarchy when its most cherished image, that of a new generation being born into it, is called into question? There is a reason this story is resurfacing now. A reason that whispers of legal filings, frantic backdoor meetings, and even a renewed investigation are beginning to circulate in elite circles. There is a reason Meghan Markle is reportedly furious, a reason her team has gone silent, and a reason Prince Harry is said to be absent from recent public events, choosing instead to stay far away from the noise or perhaps from the truth itself. Because once this door is opened, it cannot be closed again. And what lies behind it may forever change how the world sees the woman who married into royalty and the man who once walked beside her, beaming with pride as he introduced a baby to the world that, according to some, may never have been born where they claimed he was. To fully understand how we arrived at this moment, a moment where the integrity of a royal birth is under renewed suspicion, we need to rewind to the spring of 2019. When the world was swept into the media whirlwind that accompanied the announcement of baby Archie's arrival. On May 6, 2019, the official royal statement announced that Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, had given birth to a healthy baby boy at 5:26 a.m. The location, at the time, was quietly noted as London, but not confirmed publicly as Portland Hospital until after the fact. Almost immediately, questions were raised among journalists who had long covered royal births. Unlike Kate Middleton, who appeared with her children outside the Lindo wing just hours after each delivery, Meghan and Harry took a far more private route. No press outside the hospital. No on-the-steps presentation. Not even a brief moment for the cameras. Instead, a pre-recorded photo opportunity occurred 2 days later in the elegant halls of Windsor Castle, with a tight, choreographed introduction that offered little room for scrutiny. The tone was warm, but something felt distant. The baby was tightly swaddled, his face barely visible. Harry's excitement felt real, yet his speech seemed oddly pre-written. Meghan barely spoke. The moment passed, and media coverage quickly returned to fawning headlines and congratulatory fanfare. But in corners of the internet, some viewers were paying closer attention. They noticed how Meghan's baby bump had shifted in appearance drastically between March and April. In some photos, she looked ready to give birth. In others, she looked months behind. Then there was the infamous folding bump video, a clip where Meghan bends to sit during a panel appearance, and the bump appears to collapse inward, almost unnaturally. That clip was dismissed by many as doctored or simply a result of her dress bunching. But others weren't so sure. Now, those same skeptics are being vindicated by recent footage analysis experts who confirm the video has not been tampered with, and that the movement defies what would be expected of a full-term pregnant abdomen. Fast forward to today, and the buzz surrounding these images has turned into something far more serious. Multiple individuals, claiming to have worked at Portland Hospital during the week of May 6, 2019, have come forward under condition of anonymity. They are adamant. No official patient records exist for Meghan Markle's labor or delivery. No room was prepped. No security protocol initiated. No birth team assigned. Some claim to have seen Harry's protection officers enter the building briefly, only to leave again, without any visible royal in tow. Their claims are being supported by what one journalist calls a silence that screams. The hospital has refused to comment on whether Meghan was ever admitted. The palace has never released the name of the doctor who delivered Archie. Unlike prior royal births, where physician names, times, and even birth weights were immediately confirmed, this event felt unusually guarded. But that was once accepted as part of Meghan and Harry's desire for privacy. Now, it's being reevaluated as potential evidence of something being deliberately hidden. Adding more fuel to the fire, there are whispers that legal documents related to Archie's birth certificate underwent last-minute revisions, some say even post-birth, and lacked critical verification signatures from medical staff. Legal analysts suggest this alone may not indicate deception, but when combined with hospital whistleblowers and visual inconsistencies in Meghan's pregnancy, the questions become harder to ignore. Behind the scenes, the tension reportedly grew between Prince Harry and senior royals. Charles, always obsessed with public perception, allegedly urged Harry to silence the noise around Meghan's pregnancy. William, according to one source, was never fully convinced by the birth story but chose not to confront his brother directly. The Queen remained quiet, but reportedly pressed palace aides to avoid media blowback at all costs. At the center of it all, Harry was said to be balancing between two extremes: protect his wife or confront what his instincts were beginning to whisper to him. That whisper turned into a full-blown alarm when Harry, according to royal staff, began asking close aides whether a private DNA test could be arranged, discreetly, and without Meghan's knowledge. The reason? He reportedly noticed traits in Archie's development that didn't seem to match his or Meghan's. More than just eye color or hair, Harry was said to have remarked that something doesn't feel right. And in a family where bloodline is everything, that quiet suspicion carried enormous weight. To date, no official confirmation has been made about any DNA testing. But if the whispers are true and Harry did in fact push for such verification, then that single decision could suggest he, too, has begun questioning the very foundation of his own family's future. Now, Meghan is reportedly furious about the renewed attention. Her legal team has declined to comment on the video or the hospital whistleblowers. Palace insiders suggest she's pressuring Harry to issue a public statement, one that would denounce the rumors, silence the speculation, and reaffirm their version of events. But Harry hasn't done so. He remains conspicuously quiet. No social media posts, no interviews, no denials, just silence. And that silence is louder than any statement he could give. Because this story isn't going away. The footage has been downloaded, archived, and analyzed. The hospital staff, protected under anonymity and whistleblower protections, continue to speak. Journalists who once backed off the story are now revisiting their notes. And royal observers everywhere are watching closely, wondering how long this narrative can be controlled before it detonates in full public view. In the sections that follow, we will unpack every piece of this story. From the earliest discrepancies in Meghan's pregnancy timeline, to the shifting shape of her bump, to the brave testimony of hospital insiders who say the Duchess of Sussex never crossed through Portland Hospital's front doors. We will examine how this impacts royal succession, public trust, and the fragile reputation of a monarchy already battered by controversy. But before we begin, remember this. Every royal tale starts with a symbol. A wedding, a coronation, a baby. These symbols define not just individuals, but institutions. If the truth behind one of them begins to crumble, what does that say about everything else? Stay with us. The story you're about to hear may forever alter the way we look at the most famous family in the world. It began like so many things do in the digital age, with a clip. Not a new clip, but an old one, rediscovered and repackaged in a way that made it impossible to ignore. It was a video Meghan Markle likely hoped had been long buried under layers of other royal content, forgotten in the tidal wave of media that surrounded her and Prince Harry during their time as senior royals. But someone, somewhere, decided to bring it back. And this time, it wouldn't just be the fringe corners of the internet watching. The clip in question is simple. Meghan, pregnant, walking confidently toward the stage during a panel discussion on International Women's Day in 2019. She's greeted warmly by the moderator, and as she begins to take her seat, the camera captures the moment her midsection folds. Her baby bump, round and prominent just seconds earlier, seems to deflate and shift unnaturally, almost as if it's being compressed like fabric, not flesh. She smiles. She speaks. The panel continues. But in that split second, everything changed. When it first circulated in 2019, the video received only limited attention. Royal watchers noticed. So did gossip columnists. A few YouTubers posted breakdowns, suggesting the bump might be fake. Most mainstream media outlets, however, dismissed it as an illusion created by her flowing dress and the angle of the camera. The explanation, while vague, was enough for the story to die, temporarily. But fast forward to today, and something has shifted. A new version of that same clip has emerged. This time, it's sharper, slowed down, stabilized, and edited side by side with multiple other videos of Meghan during her pregnancy. All of them show variations of the same odd phenomenon. A baby bump that shifts position dramatically, appears to flatten when she sits, or bounces unnaturally as she walks. In some frames, it seems larger. In others, visibly smaller, all within a span of days. This new compilation didn't come from a gossip site or royal critic. It came from a medical professional, a midwife with over 20 years of birthing experience, who chose to remain anonymous but verified her credentials to a media outlet. In a quiet, serious voiceover, she calmly states, "What I'm seeing here doesn't match any pregnancy I've ever worked with. The abdomen doesn't move like it should. The baby bump behaves like a prosthetic. I cannot say definitively what this is, but I can say it is highly irregular." That voiceover, combined with the eerie, undeniable footage, turned a once-dismissed rumor into a serious question. What exactly was Meghan wearing? And more importantly, why? The video exploded. Millions of views within days. It was reposted across Twitter, TikTok, Telegram channels, and Instagram stories. Prominent figures began commenting, not to mock, but to question. Some asked if it was possible Meghan had worn a decoy belly for comfort, privacy, or health reasons. Others weren't so generous. "You don't fake a royal birth," one commentator said. "This isn't Hollywood. This is the line of succession." The royal family's silence was immediate and deafening. There was no response, no rebuttal, no legal threat. For an institution that usually moves swiftly to shut down damaging stories, especially about the women who marry into it, this was strange. In the absence of a firm denial, speculation deepened. Was the palace avoiding confirmation of something they had quietly suspected all along? Independent investigators, many of them former royal correspondents or documentarians, began to re-examine other public appearances from Meghan's pregnancy. There was the walk through the Moroccan market, where her bump appeared high and firm. Then, just days later, at the Endeavour Fund Awards, the bump appeared lower and flatter. Eyewitnesses noted her struggle to sit properly at one event and her unusually fast movement at another, prompting the question, would someone that far along in pregnancy be moving like that? More comparisons followed. At the New Zealand house visit in March 2019, Meghan's bump seemed nearly full-term. Yet in April, at a private lunch event, photographers noted a seemingly smaller shape under her dress. Lighting, angles, wardrobe, those were all plausible explanations, until the footage was stabilized and compared side by side. The changes were too stark, the inconsistencies too precise. This wasn't just visual distortion. This was physical contradiction. Then came the revelation from the video analyst, a former television producer and film editor who'd spent years correcting continuity errors in dramas. He watched the slowed-down footage and said, "That's not a natural body shift. That's a garment collapsing inward." His professional opinion, it looked like a prosthetic belly, one that may have been improperly secured or padded. The reaction was swift. Journalists who had long been sidelined for questioning Meghan's story returned to the conversation. Editors began issuing new editorial inquiries to palace contacts. Viewers dug into Meghan's maternity wardrobe, noting how certain coats and dresses seemed designed to obscure, not celebrate, her pregnancy. One former fashion editor remarked, "Royal pregnancies are usually styled very deliberately. There's a pride in showing the bump." Kate's silhouettes were all about highlighting that moment. But Meghan's outfits were inconsistent. Some outfits made her appear 9 months along in February. Others made her look 6 months along in April. It was hard to tell what stage she was in, and that's unusual. But all of this might have stayed in the realm of theory until a Portland hospital employee saw the viral footage and reached out to a journalist anonymously. In a secure email, the staffer wrote, "I saw that clip. I don't know what she was wearing, but I can tell you this, she never gave birth at Portland Hospital. She wasn't there. We prepped for a VIP, but no one showed up. Everyone was told to keep quiet." That email, initially dismissed as internet fiction, gained credibility when it was followed by 3 more from individuals claiming to be nurses, reception staff, and a night shift supervisor, all working in or around the maternity unit at Portland during the week of May 6, 2019. All said the same thing. There was no labor, no noise, no security presence, no medical team scrambling as they would during any royal birth. Nothing. The video had done more than raise questions. It had shaken something loose. When the footage was shown to a retired royal protection officer who had served during both Princess Diana's and Kate Middleton's pregnancies, he responded carefully. "Every royal birth is a major operation. We don't just walk in with them. There are sweeps, coordination, multiple teams, and always backup plans. For no one to have seen anything, it doesn't happen. Not with a royal baby." So now the world is watching. And the video, that clip from 2019 that nearly vanished from the cultural conversation, is at the center of it all. The moment Meghan's stomach folded might be the moment this entire narrative begins to unravel. Was it an illusion? A harmless fashion choice? Or was it the first visible crack? The first to come forward was a woman we'll call Nadia, a senior nurse who had worked in the maternity ward for over a decade. She contacted an investigative journalist several days after the viral video resurfaced. Her message was careful, deliberate, and chilling in its clarity. "I don't know what Meghan was doing," she wrote, "but she didn't give birth here. I was on shift every day that week. We were briefed that a VIP may arrive, and preparations were made, but no one ever showed. No ambulance, no private escort, no secured hallway, nothing. Just silence. Nadia wasn't alone. Within days, two more staffers, one administrative and one in neonatal care, reached out with similar accounts. They confirmed that in the days leading up to May 6, 2019, whispers of a royal patient spread across the hospital's upper levels. Staff were told to maintain discretion, expect possible lockdown procedures, and be on call. This was normal protocol for high-security patients. But then, without explanation, the urgency vanished. No arrival, no follow-up, no birth. In most institutions, this might be dismissed as confusion or miscommunication. But Portland Hospital runs on precision. When a high-profile delivery is scheduled, every department is activated. Security coordinates with law enforcement. Parking garages are locked down. The kitchen prepares specific meals based on patient restrictions. Even linen services are informed to ensure that the birth suite is spotless and fully stocked. One midwife who asked to be referred to only as Claire said it simply, "You don't just miss a royal birth. We're briefed to the minute. It didn't happen here. That much I know." Claire also revealed that after the due date had passed, a strange calm fell over the ward. Everyone was tense in the lead-up. There was this feeling of waiting for the big moment. But then, nothing. No champagne in the nurses' station. No hallway cleanup. No afterbirth quiet. It was like we'd prepped for an event that got canceled at the last second. The implications were clear. If Meghan didn't deliver at Portland, where did she deliver? Or more pointedly, did she deliver at all? Another anonymous hospital staff member, this time from the records department, offered a more technical form of confirmation. Through a secure source, they described how all births are logged in a central hospital database. For high-profile patients, access is restricted, but the event is still recorded. Each entry includes time, physician in charge, attending nurses, and room assignment. When asked if Meghan Markle's name, or any variation, appeared in the database during that week, the answer was definitive. Nothing. Not under Markle. Not under Mountbatten-Windsor. Not under the royal alias often used for protected clients. There was no birth. At least not here. Journalists who pursued these leads began submitting Freedom of Information Act requests to cross-reference ambulance dispatch records and government birth registries. While many of these requests were denied due to privacy laws, several independent analysts noted that the gaps in documentation were not typical, especially for an event as significant as a royal birth. Birth certificates were delayed. Signatures were missing. Names of medical professionals were omitted. The media, meanwhile, was given only a single photo, Archie's feet, and a vague assurance that all was well. But even among the hospital staff, something more sinister was rumored to be at play, a gag order. In the weeks following Archie's birth, Claire says staff were approached by hospital administrators and instructed not to speak to anyone, especially the press, about what did or didn't happen. Some were allegedly asked to sign updated non-disclosure agreements. Others were quietly transferred to different shifts or departments. A few even left the hospital altogether. It felt like they were trying to scrub the memory of that week out of our minds, Nadia said. We didn't talk about it. We weren't allowed to. And anyone who tried to ask questions got shut down. When asked whether this kind of directive was standard for royal births, both Nadia and Claire shook their heads. With other royals, Claire explained, we're told to respect privacy. But this wasn't that. This was different. This felt like fear. Like we were protecting a secret. But we didn't know what it was. That fear extended beyond the hospital. A journalist who attempted to investigate the hospital's birth records was reportedly warned off by a legal firm representing the Sussexes. Emails went unanswered. Sources stopped responding. Then came the calls, subtle threats reminding the journalist that certain inquiries could lead to lawsuits. It was clear the story had touched a nerve. Yet, despite the risk, the voices kept coming. A night shift technician who maintained the hospital's security camera system recalled being asked to delete all footage from the west entrance between May 4th and May 7th. They said it was a glitch, he said. But we never delete footage without incident reports. There was no incident. They just wanted it gone. Another nurse, who had previously worked with high-profile clients, described the entire ordeal as a professional erasure. In her words, the records were too clean, too quiet. It was like a ghost pregnancy. The kind you prepare for, but that never arrives. One particularly disturbing revelation came from a junior staff member who claimed to have overheard a phone conversation between a hospital administrator and a palace liaison. In hushed tones, the administrator allegedly asked if the facility would be expected to stage a delivery room for media purposes should any questions arise. The answer, though never confirmed, seemed to reassure her. What these insiders describe is not just a failure of transparency, it's a concerted effort to manufacture a story and erase its contradictions. And now, as the video of Meghan's folding bump spreads across platforms and the public begins to re-examine every detail, the accounts from Portland staff add the weight of lived reality to the visual evidence. One might ask, why now? Why are these voices speaking out years later? The answer may be simple: time, distance, and the courage sparked by watching the lie unravel. As one staffer put it, when you realize the story might finally break, you don't want to be the one who stayed silent. You want to be the one who tried to tell the truth. In the end, Portland Hospital may never release an official statement. The royal family may never admit to any irregularities. But the people who walked its halls, who checked its charts, who prepped rooms and waited for a royal who never came, they remember. They know. And they're finally ready to talk. As suspicions around the legitimacy of Meghan's pregnancy began to grow, attention naturally shifted toward the timeline. If Meghan Markle did not give birth at Portland Hospital, as multiple whistleblowers now claim, and if there are no official medical records to support that narrative, then the question becomes far more direct. Where was she really? It's a question that challenges not only the official story, but forces a re-examination of her every public appearance, every scheduled event, and every unexplained absence in the months and weeks leading up to Archie's reported birth. The British public, and indeed the world, was presented with a timeline that appeared logical on the surface. But as we now peel back the layers, what becomes disturbingly clear is that the timeline doesn't hold up under scrutiny. There are gaps, there are inconsistencies, and there are moments of complete silence when Meghan should have been highly visible. Let's begin with the announcement itself. On October 15, 2018, Kensington Palace confirmed that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex were expecting their first child in spring 2019. The statement was deliberately vague, lacking a specific due date. Meghan was seen later that week during the couple's tour of Australia and Fiji, where she appeared with a small but noticeable bump. According to most pregnancy tracking norms, this would suggest she was around 12 to 14 weeks along, possibly more. That would place her due date somewhere in late April or early May. Throughout the royal tour, Meghan wore carefully selected outfits, some form-fitting, others loose, and gave multiple speeches, all while maintaining a brisk pace. Media praised her stamina. Some even remarked that she didn't seem pregnant enough to be near the end of her first trimester. Still, no one questioned it outright. Royal pregnancies are, after all, a subject mostly left untouched by journalists, a kind of sacred privacy rarely violated. But as the months progressed, her appearances became more tightly choreographed. Meghan began favoring oversized coats and strategically draped dresses. At times, her baby bump appeared large and rounded. At others, almost entirely absent. The shift in shape was noticeable, and it wasn't just speculation. Fashion analysts began quietly pointing it out in their blogs. One remarked that Meghan's bump defied pregnancy progression by seeming to grow and shrink within short periods of time. In January 2019, Meghan visited the Mayhew Animal Welfare Charity in London. Photos from the event show a prominent bump under a cream-colored dress. Then, just 10 days later, during a visit to the National Theatre, her bump appeared significantly smaller. The difference was stark enough that even news outlets made passing mention of it, though always framed in terms like optical illusion or clever tailoring. But these differences weren't just visual oddities. They were part of a larger pattern of confusion. Meghan would sometimes hold her bump protectively, sometimes not at all. She was seen squatting easily, walking briskly in heels, bending forward without difficulty, movements not typically associated with women in their third trimester. In February, Meghan flew to New York City for a highly publicized baby shower. The trip itself was seen as extravagant and controversial, but what caught the eye of skeptics was her appearance. Paparazzi photos taken during her departure from the Markle Hotel show Meghan with a distinct bump. However, just days earlier, photos from her London appearances had depicted a dramatically smaller one. The inconsistency was jarring. Then came March. Meghan made several public appearances, including the Commonwealth Day service, where she was seen in a white coat. Here again, her bump was prominent. But just a week later, during a surprise outing at New Zealand House, her belly appeared flatter, almost as if the pregnancy had regressed. A midwife analyzing the footage said, "In a normal pregnancy, by late March, the belly is firm, high, and consistent in shape. What we're seeing here is an abdomen that varies wildly, that doesn't happen naturally." Adding to the mystery was Meghan's unexplained absence in mid-April. As the Duchess entered what should have been the final weeks of her pregnancy, she abruptly stopped making public appearances. This isn't necessarily abnormal, but what raised eyebrows was the lack of official communication. In previous royal pregnancies, Kate Middleton's final engagements were announced ahead of time, and the media was kept informed of her status. With Meghan, silence. During this same period, royal reporters began to notice something else unusual. The Royal Rota, the pool of accredited journalists allowed access to royal events, was increasingly being excluded from events involving Meghan. No press were invited to her final public appearances. Photo opportunities were limited. No media were stationed outside Portland Hospital. No camera crews. No crowd control. No royal watchers camped outside, as was tradition. On May 6th, the palace released a brief statement that Meghan had gone into labor in the early hours of the morning and given birth at 5:26 a.m. Just hours later, Harry appeared before the press, standing alone in front of a horse stable at Windsor, grinning and flustered. He described the experience as amazing and said they were still thinking about a name. It was casual, unrehearsed, and strangely unspecific. He didn't mention the hospital. He didn't mention the doctor. He didn't even mention Meghan's condition beyond saying, "Mother and baby are doing well." It was a brief moment of joy, but something about it felt off. 2 days later, Harry and Meghan appeared at Windsor Castle with their newborn. The baby was wrapped tightly, face barely visible, and held protectively by Harry. Meghan, glowing and smiling, wore a white dress. The moment, while charming, was noticeably controlled. No media questions were allowed. No extended footage was provided. The entire interaction lasted barely 2 minutes. Meghan thanked the public, smiled, and walked away. Now, with everything we've learned from hospital insiders, these moments are being viewed in an entirely new light. Where was Meghan in mid-April through early May? Was she recovering from a secret birth? Was she hiding away while a surrogate gave birth elsewhere? Or, more controversially, was there never a birth at all, just an introduction of a baby born through means never disclosed to the public? There are no known ambulance records placing Meghan at Portland Hospital. No eyewitness reports of her entering or leaving. No nurse, no doctor, no midwife has publicly confirmed her presence there. Unlike with previous royal births, no post-delivery statements were issued from medical professionals. No traditional family photos from inside the hospital. No publicly documented timeline of when Meghan was admitted or discharged. Instead, the timeline presented by the palace now appears to be stitched together from selective appearances, vague statements, and press-friendly photo ops that carefully avoid hard facts. The final piece of this puzzle comes from leaked internal palace schedules, obtained by a journalist working with a royal staffer. These schedules detail royal family movements and engagements. According to these documents, on May 6th, the supposed day of Archie's birth, Meghan was listed as being at Frogmore Cottage in Windsor, not at a hospital. There was no travel time blocked out, no hospital liaison listed, no security movement, no indication whatsoever that she had left the premises. That discrepancy is significant. Frogmore Cottage is not a medical facility. If Meghan was there, then where did the birth take place? Or was it even taking place that day? Some believe the baby was born weeks earlier and the announcement delayed to manage media coverage. Others think a surrogate was used, with the public presentation designed to obscure that fact. A smaller but growing number believe the entire pregnancy was an illusion, crafted to create the appearance of a royal heir while maintaining control over every aspect of the narrative. The truth remains obscured, hidden behind walls of royal privilege, protected by legal silence, and guarded by a media apparatus reluctant to ask too many questions. But as timelines are challenged and facts begin to emerge, the foundation of the official story begins to crumble. Because when you lie about where someone was, or wasn't, it's only a matter of time before the whole truth comes out. To understand why the questions surrounding Meghan Markle's pregnancy continue to grip the public imagination, one must first examine the weight of tradition. The British royal family operates on centuries of established customs, customs that are not just symbolic but functional. Nowhere is this more evident than in the way royal births are handled. Every stage, from the announcement of a pregnancy to the birth itself, is bound by a carefully upheld process rooted in visibility, transparency, and continuity. When Meghan's journey to motherhood diverged from these expectations, the palace called it modern. But as the evidence mounts, it increasingly looks less like modernization and more like strategic evasion. In the House of Windsor, royal births are public affairs, not private family moments. The monarchy is, at its core, a public institution, and the arrival of a new heir is seen as a moment of national importance. From Queen Elizabeth to Princess Diana to Catherine, Princess of Wales, each royal woman who gave birth did so under strict observance, both internally and publicly. Birth locations were disclosed, timelines were shared, and most importantly, the press was given access to a formal presentation of mother and child within hours of delivery. This tradition isn't simply about satisfying public curiosity. It's about demonstrating legitimacy. In a hereditary monarchy where bloodline dictates power and privilege, visibility and verifiability of birth carry constitutional weight. A baby's arrival isn't just a family event, it's a moment that affirms the continuity of the crown. So when Meghan chose not to deliver in the Lindo wing at St. Mary's Hospital, the same location where Diana and Kate gave birth to all of their children, the decision raised eyebrows. Initially, it was reported as a desire for privacy, a wish to avoid the circus of media outside the hospital. On the surface, that explanation seemed understandable. But in retrospect, it appears to have been the first in a series of choices that actively circumvented protocol. The Lindo wing isn't just symbolic. It's equipped for high-security, high-profile births. It offers the privacy Meghan claimed to seek. Security teams coordinate with hospital staff weeks in advance. There are provisions for royal arrivals, established procedures for press briefings, and most critically, an internal system of verification that ensures every stage of the process is accounted for. Kate Middleton posed with each of her children just hours after delivery, standing outside the Lindo wing, radiant but visibly tired, allowing the world to see her holding the new heir. Those brief appearances, no matter how orchestrated, served a key function. They confirmed to the public, without a shadow of a doubt, that the birth took place as reported. There were no questions, no silence, no secrecy. With Meghan, everything was different. From the beginning, palace communications around her pregnancy were vague. While the press was told she was due in late April or early May, no official due date was ever confirmed. When she went into labor, the press wasn't informed until hours after the supposed birth had already occurred. And when she finally did appear publicly with the baby, it was days later, inside the walls of Windsor Castle, not outside a hospital. This break from protocol was initially celebrated as a progressive step forward, Meghan and Harry choosing to do things their own way. But behind the scenes, insiders tell a different story. One former palace aide claims the decision to avoid the Lindo wing came with tension. There were internal discussions about optics and precedent, the aide said. Senior staff were concerned that abandoning such a long-standing tradition would spark controversy. But Harry insisted. He was adamant about protecting Meghan's comfort. Or perhaps, protecting something else entirely. Medical protocol within the royal family also typically involves the Queen's gynecologist being present for the delivery. This practice ensures not only medical excellence but continuity. The same physicians who delivered William and Harry also delivered George, Charlotte, and Louis. With Meghan, no such physician was ever named. In fact, to this day, the name of the doctor who allegedly delivered Archie has never been made public, a first in royal history. This level of opacity extends even to the birth certificate. When Archie's certificate was finally released to the public, it revealed more questions than answers. The place of birth was listed as Portland Hospital, but the attending physician's name was notably absent. In prior cases, the birth certificates of royal babies included full names of the delivering doctors as a matter of record. Meghan's did not, nor was any explanation provided for the omission. The contrast between Meghan's pregnancy and Kate's is stark. Kate's pregnancies were handled with meticulous adherence to tradition. From early public announcements to clearly defined maternity leaves, every step was visible and documented. Meghan, on the other hand, seemed to disappear at will, reappearing in locations and with appearances that did not align with expectations for a woman nearing full-term pregnancy. At one point in April, it was reported that Meghan was nesting at Frogmore Cottage, preparing for a home birth. That claim was quietly contradicted when the hospital birth certificate was later revealed. Why issue such a misleading report? Who authorized it? And what was the purpose of the confusion? Insiders point to a communications breakdown or deliberate obfuscation. According to a palace source, Meghan's team kept tight control over media statements, often overriding traditional royal PR channels. They operated like an independent entity, the source said. That's not how things are done. Every royal pregnancy is handled with input from the institution. But with Meghan, it was as if they were managing a brand, not a baby. Some argue this was cultural, that Meghan, being American and a celebrity, was used to controlling her narrative. But others believe it was strategic, an attempt to construct an image that served specific ends while avoiding the verification steps that could challenge it. Consider this. In every other royal pregnancy, we've seen not just public appearances, but internal records. Hospital staff willing to confirm details. Nurses who smiled for photos. Doctors who signed statements. With Meghan, there is none of that. No staff has come forward. No physician has spoken. No internal memo from Portland Hospital has ever been leaked, despite leaks surrounding every other major royal event in the past decade. If Meghan had simply wanted privacy, she could have followed in the footsteps of Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, who gave birth at Frimley Park Hospital away from the Lindo wing, but still participated in clear, traceable royal procedures. Instead, Meghan's path was marked by contradiction, secretive timelines, misleading announcements, and a birth that occurred entirely out of the public eye. Some royal commentators have suggested that this departure from protocol reflects a larger issue, a belief that Meghan saw the monarchy as a platform, not a duty. Her refusal to participate in traditions may have been interpreted internally as a rejection of the role she was given. But now, with mounting testimony from hospital staff and growing evidence that her pregnancy may have involved deception, her break from protocol is being reinterpreted. Was this about privacy, or was it about controlling a narrative that couldn't withstand scrutiny? One former courtier put it bluntly. Tradition exists for a reason. When you break every rule, you force people to ask why. In Meghan's case, there may be a reason no one was allowed to see. And the question that looms over all of it is simple. If you have nothing to hide, why hide everything? In any pregnancy, especially during the second and third trimesters, the physical transformation of a woman's body tends to follow a clear biological progression. The belly grows in a predictable way, the skin stretches, movement becomes slower and more limited, and there's a consistency in posture and gait that medical professionals and experienced mothers alike recognize instantly. But Meghan Markle's pregnancy was anything but consistent, and it wasn't just the media who noticed. From the moment her pregnancy was announced in October 2018 to the official birth announcement in May 2019, Meghan made dozens of public appearances. She walked red carpets, visited charities, went on overseas tours, and stood before audiences across the Commonwealth. In each appearance, the media captured hundreds of high-resolution images and video clips, images that would later become the center of growing suspicion. Observers began noting the obvious. Her baby bump seemed to change, not in the expected way of gradual growth, but in sudden shifts. In one event, it appeared low and round. In another, it was high and protruding. Days apart, sometimes even within the same week, Meghan's bump would appear significantly larger or smaller. And most curiously, it sometimes seemed to move independently from her body, bouncing unnaturally as she walked, shifting from side to side when she turned, and even appearing to fold when she sat down. At the International Women's Day panel in March 2019, Meghan took her seat on stage and smiled warmly at the audience. Dressed in a fitted black and white dress, she walked confidently across the stage. But as she began to sit, the fabric over her abdomen appeared to buckle and collapse inward, a moment now known as the infamous folding bump incident. The video went viral. In slow motion, the collapse was undeniable. Many dismissed it as a visual trick caused by the dress or lighting. But medical professionals, particularly midwives and OB-GYNs, began commenting online, saying such an occurrence was highly unusual, if not impossible. One midwife, who chose to remain anonymous but had delivered over 600 babies throughout her career, noted, "At that stage in pregnancy, the abdomen is firm. It doesn't fold or collapse like that. What I saw looked like a prosthetic shifting under pressure." Another obstetrician echoed the concern, "A real pregnancy belly, especially one full term, doesn't move like that. It's taut, stable, and connected to the mother's body through muscles and ligaments. What I saw was independent movement, something that doesn't align with natural gestation. Meghan's defenders quickly claimed this was a result of tailored clothing, clever draping, or simply the result of her slim figure allowing for more variation in bump appearance. But as more footage surfaced, those explanations began to lose ground. During the couple's visit to Morocco in February 2019, Meghan appeared in a loose-fitting red gown. Her bump was prominent and rounded. Just days later, at the Natural History Museum in London, she wore a cream coat, and the bump appeared significantly smaller. This wasn't a matter of clothing. The physical difference was too dramatic. Even basic photo comparisons revealed a discrepancy that couldn't be explained away by angle or lighting. At the Commonwealth Day service in March, Meghan's bump looked nearly full term. But later that month, at a private meeting with campaigners in London, the bump looked smaller again. Her dress clung to her body. There was no hiding anything, and yet, the difference was visibly clear. Multiple images from royal photographers revealed side profiles that showed a flattened abdomen, contradicting her prior appearance just weeks before. By April, Meghan was said to be preparing for her due date. Reports emerged that she was nesting at home, resting and awaiting labor. But even during her final public appearances, the inconsistency persisted. At the New Zealand House event in early April, her bump once again looked unusually low. Body language experts noted how she moved freely, squatted easily, and didn't show the typical discomfort associated with women in their final weeks of pregnancy. Then there were the strange moments, ones that seemed to defy even the most generous explanations. In one widely circulated clip, Meghan adjusts her coat and appears to reposition the bump. Her hands slide underneath it, and the shape shifts slightly, almost as if she were adjusting a removable object. The video is not edited. It's not speculative. It exists in the public domain, untouched and unaltered. What exactly was she doing? Many point to the video from her visit to the Royal Albert Hall in January 2019, where she arrived in a floor-length sequin gown. As she walks and waves, the bump swings noticeably from side to side, disconnected from her body's natural motion. The movement is so distinct that body movement analysts have commented on it in online breakdowns. One said, "You can see your shoulders, hips, and bump moving in completely different rhythms. That's not how the human body behaves during pregnancy." Some speculated that Meghan may have used a prosthetic during early months to give the impression of being further along than she was, a common tactic among public figures seeking to mislead the media about due dates. But this doesn't explain the inconsistencies seen even into her supposed final month. Nor does it account for why the shape, size, and even the firmness of the bump seem to change without pattern. Fashion experts have weighed in as well. One stylist who has dressed public figures during pregnancies noted, "There's only so much a dress can do. A foam or silicone belly can be designed to look very real, especially under layers. But those garments can shift, especially when not attached properly. That's when you get anomalies, folds, slides, bouncing that doesn't match the rest of the body." The question that now hangs over these anomalies is simple. If the pregnancy was real, why did the bump behave as if it weren't? Some believe Meghan wore padding during parts of her pregnancy to appear further along, possibly to align with a preset media narrative or to shield a private medical situation. But others suspect a more calculated act, that the entire bump was, from beginning to end, fabricated. Adding more weight to the suspicion is the fact that Meghan herself has never directly addressed the folding bump, clip, or any of the countless bump inconsistency photos. Neither has Harry. When asked in interviews about the pregnancy, they focus on emotion, on the experience of becoming parents, but they never address details, no stories about going into labor, no memories of hospital staff, no anecdotes about delivery. It's always broad, impersonal, and vague. Even during their Netflix docuseries, where they seemingly shared everything, text messages, phone calls, intimate photos, there was no footage of Meghan in labor, no image of her holding Archie immediately after birth, and no moment that captured what should have been one of the most documented moments of their lives. Compare this to other royals and celebrities, who often share post-birth hospital photos, candid behind-the-scenes images, or even quiet moments of recovery. With Meghan, there's nothing. Just a tightly controlled castle hallway appearance, baby swaddled, face hidden, Meghan smiling but distant, and Harry holding the child without once letting go. These choices might have been made in the name of privacy, that's what the public was told. But when examined alongside the footage, the inconsistencies, and the testimonies from hospital insiders, the narrative begins to look less like privacy and more like a plan to control an illusion. The idea that Meghan used a prosthetic or surrogate is no longer dismissed by the public as conspiracy. It is a growing discussion, even among professional circles, medical experts, fashion consultants, body language specialists, and former royal aides. Each group offers a different lens through which to view the evidence, but they all return to the same point. The visuals don't match the story. There's a reason the changing bump theory has persisted for so long. It isn't based on jealousy, racism, or petty curiosity. It's rooted in something far more rational: observation. People aren't imagining what they see. They're asking why the images show what they show, and why no one, not Meghan, not Harry, not the palace, has provided a satisfactory explanation. When truth is withheld, speculation fills the void. And in the case of Meghan's pregnancy, the silence has only made the questions louder. What we are left with is a string of public appearances, inconsistent physical details, and a baby bump that seemed to grow, shrink, fold, bounce, and vanish, depending on the day, the dress, and the angle. And in a family where every appearance matters, where succession depends on certainty, that kind of inconsistency isn't just strange. In the early days of fatherhood, Prince Harry seemed overjoyed. Standing outside Windsor's stables on May 6, 2019, just hours after the palace announced the birth of his son, he appeared relaxed, emotional, and almost giddy. The press clip was short, under 2 minutes. But in that brief statement, he described the experience as amazing, repeatedly calling himself incredibly proud of his wife and excited about their bundle of joy. His smile was wide, his body language open. If he had any doubt in that moment, it didn't show. But emotions can be complex, and public performances, especially for royals, are rarely straightforward. Behind Harry's grin and wide-eyed joy that day may have been something else entirely: uncertainty, perhaps even confusion. And in the months that followed, that confusion, according to several royal insiders, began to deepen into something more troubling: a quiet, growing doubt. At first, there was nothing outwardly unusual. Harry embraced his new role with enthusiasm. In interviews, he spoke warmly of sleepless nights, baby cries, and how fatherhood had changed his perspective on life. Friends said he was protective, hands-on, and eager to share photos of his son with close associates. But others noticed something else: a shift in his behavior. A former aide who worked in Harry's communications circle recalls how the Duke's mood began to darken about 4 months after Archie's birth. He became more withdrawn in meetings, more tense during calls, the aide said. He didn't seem focused, like something was weighing on him. At the time, most assumed it was the pressure of new parenthood. But privately, some began to suspect there was more to it. According to a palace source with direct access to Harry during that period, the prince began asking increasingly specific questions about his son's appearance. Not publicly, not even with most family members, but quietly in hushed conversations with medical professionals, royal aides, and even childhood friends. The trigger? Archie's developmental changes. Harry would stare at the baby for long periods, the source explained. At first, he said nothing. But then he began saying things like, "Do you think he looks like me?" Or, "Isn't it strange how his hair's coming in so different?" They seemed like innocent comments, but there was a pattern, a hesitance in his voice. Friends close to Harry have confirmed that the prince was always concerned about legacy and bloodline. Unlike his older brother William, who had a clear role within the institution, Harry struggled with identity. Being the spare had always affected him. But fatherhood seemed to awaken something deeper, a need to understand exactly who his child was, and by extension, who he was be. It wasn't long before those quiet questions became something more concrete. According to one well-placed insider, Harry eventually raised the possibility of conducting a private DNA test, not through palace medical staff, but through an independent laboratory. The decision, if true, suggests a deep level of concern, possibly even distrust. He didn't want it on record, the insider said. He didn't want it traced. It was something he was considering doing discreetly, maybe even without Meghan knowing. That possibility, that Harry would question the parentage of his own son, is seismic in its implications. It points to a fracture in the foundation of trust between Harry and Meghan. But it also suggests something even more critical, that Harry himself might have begun to suspect that the pregnancy wasn't exactly as it had been presented to the world. Sources say Harry had trouble reconciling the timeline of events. He reportedly asked questions about when Meghan first began showing, and about whether certain medical appointments aligned with the development of the pregnancy. At one point, according to a staffer who worked closely with the Sussexes, Harry even requested access to medical files, only to be told those records were off-limits, even to him. That was when things shifted, the staffer said. He became more isolated. There were fewer public outings. He wasn't as relaxed. He started clashing with palace staff more frequently. These internal conflicts weren't only about the press or public scrutiny. Harry, it seems, was struggling with something far more personal, a creeping realization that the story he had embraced and publicly endorsed might not be the full truth. His public appearances grew less frequent. Behind the scenes, tensions escalated with his family. Reports of disagreements with Prince William, once framed as ideological, may have had a more intimate origin. One source close to William claimed the older prince had his own suspicions. William raised concerns early, the source said. He asked questions no one else dared to. He noticed the inconsistencies, the gaps. But Harry wasn't ready to hear it, not then. As Harry retreated from the public eye, Meghan reportedly doubled down on her version of events. She gave interviews that subtly framed their experience as one of betrayal, by the media, by the institution, by the world. But she never spoke in detail about her birth experience. There were no shared labor stories, no memories of contractions or hospital staff, just vague language about the joy of motherhood and the importance of privacy. For Harry, that vagueness may have started to become unsettling. A former security officer who was part of Harry's detail during Meghan's pregnancy revealed an eerie moment months after Archie's birth. During a private conversation, the prince reportedly asked whether security logs showed any transport to or from the hospital. The officer, stunned by the question, said there was no record. He asked me to double-check, the officer said. I did. There was nothing. He didn't say anything after that, just nodded and walked away. These revelations point to a man caught in a quiet, internal storm, torn between the narrative he helped build and the questions he could no longer ignore. And as time went on, the stress began to show. Harry's tone in interviews changed. His language became more defensive. His body language, once open and confident, grew guarded. During the couple's explosive interview with Oprah Winfrey in 2021, he remained silent during certain pregnancy-related questions. Meghan described suicidal ideation, racism, and lack of institutional support, but Harry, while empathetic, added little about the pregnancy or birth itself. His silence, in retrospect, speaks volumes. Today, sources say Harry is more detached than ever. His relationship with senior royals is fractured. His marriage, while still intact, appears strained. And the baby at the center of it all, once a symbol of a new royal generation, is now shrouded in ambiguity. The man who once stood before the press, glowing with pride, may have been suppressing more than the excitement of fatherhood. He may have been trying to ignore the nagging voice in his head, the one telling him something was wrong. Because what happens when the story you've built your new life on begins to unravel? What happens when the joy of fatherhood becomes entangled with suspicion? And what does it mean when the man who once proudly cradled a child before the world begins to question whether that child was ever truly his? For Harry, the answers may still be unclear. But the doubt, the slow-burning, unshakable doubt, has already taken root. The whispers began quietly. First in private circles, then in carefully worded conversations behind palace walls. Prince Harry, it was said, had requested something extraordinary. Not a media statement, not a press correction, but something that would go far deeper and strike at the very heart of everything the royal family stands for, a DNA test. To understand the magnitude of such a request, one must grasp the implications it carries. A DNA test inside the royal family is not just a medical procedure, it's a challenge to lineage, to legitimacy, to the entire system of hereditary succession. For any royal to request one privately signals not just personal uncertainty, but a complete breakdown of trust in those closest to them. For Prince Harry to have allegedly made that request regarding his own son means that something in his mind had already crossed the threshold from doubt to suspicion. According to sources familiar with Harry's private behavior during the months following Archie's birth, the desire for a DNA test did not emerge overnight. It was the culmination of a series of unsettling realizations, inconsistencies in stories, behaviors that didn't align, and mounting pressure from within the palace. A former staffer who worked closely with the couple said that Harry initially tried to dismiss the oddities. He wanted to believe everything was fine, the staffer revealed. He defended Meghan at every turn. But over time, things didn't sit right with him. He'd ask questions about Archie's appearance, about the pregnancy timeline, about hospital logistics. And no one, not even Meghan, gave him clear answers. What troubled Harry most, the source claimed, was the tightening control Meghan exerted over all things related to the child. She managed their appearances, curated their baby photos, and even allegedly discouraged Harry from inviting his closest friends or family members to spend time with Archie. What began as an effort to maintain privacy started to feel, to Harry, like a carefully constructed wall, one he wasn't allowed to climb over. One particularly telling moment, according to a family friend, occurred during a routine doctor's visit. Harry reportedly asked the pediatrician a question about a genetic trait, a small physical anomaly he thought might indicate a recessive gene. The doctor gave a benign response, but Meghan appeared visibly agitated afterward, allegedly chastising Harry for making things awkward. That exchange, the friend said, was when Harry started keeping things to himself. By the time Archie was a toddler, the doubts had solidified into something more dangerous, a gnawing conviction that he needed certainty, even if it came at the cost of trust. What followed next was a quiet effort to gather information. According to insiders, Harry began researching private testing facilities, those discreet enough to operate outside of standard medical channels. He asked aides about legal parameters. He even reached out to a distant friend, a tech entrepreneur based in the US, about non-invasive testing options. But he encountered roadblocks. Any test involving a minor would require consent from both parents. And in this case, Meghan's approval was far from guaranteed. A senior legal advisor to the royal household confirmed that DNA requests within the royal family are extraordinarily rare and require multiple layers of clearance. While such tests can be used in situations involving legal disputes or medical necessity, the advisor noted, a paternity inquiry of this kind, initiated by the father, is nearly unheard of. Still, Harry pressed forward. One day, in what multiple sources describe as a private confrontation, Harry allegedly approached Meghan and asked her directly, would she consent to a DNA test? The request, though calmly delivered, caused immediate backlash. Meghan reportedly accused him of betrayal, questioning his loyalty, and accusing him of letting palace rumors corrupt their relationship. She reminded him of the racism, the press attacks, and their mutual promise to protect Archie's peace above all. But Harry, by then, wasn't interested in public optics.